right. Hi, everyone. Eric Weiss here. Today I'm talking with Andy Kemal, the founder of Infix, and he runs a small business coaching practice. He and I met at a conference several years ago. Really, hit it off in terms of philosophy around leadership and growing companies. And I thought it'd be a great time to have him on and talk about leadership. Hi, hey, Andy, how's it going?
I'm doing good, mate. How are you?
Very well today. Appreciate it. So yeah, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your background and what you're doing with Infix?
So it's great to be here, Eric. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a few years since we met, and I think we have good synergies together. So it's good. It's good to be on your little podcast here and come talk about me a little bit. I'm Andy Kemal, founder of Infix, small business coaches. My background is mostly corporate. I have an extensive background, 30 years working in high-tech industry. 20 years of that was at Qualcomm, where I helped Qualcomm deliver a number of different products, done due diligence on a number of company buys, and helped to make lots of money for Qualcomm in my tenure there. One of my kind of claims to fame is I helped to develop a product called Brew, which stands for Binary Runtime Environment for Wireless. And Brew was the precursor to the Apple App Stores and the Google Android. It was one of the very first platforms on cell phones, back when cell phones had little monochrome displays about this big.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, people were playing games on that, primarily in Asia, a lot in Asia, China, Japan, and South Korea were big users back in late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I
And we
remember it.
created that technology.
Yeah, it
You
was.
remember it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was basically the first kind of app model on a phone. So kind of bridging the gap between the old PDAs, right, and the more modern cell phones that again had their smaller, kind of lower quality screens, but having that same ability to basically bring those PDA apps onto the cell phone for the first time. So yeah, that was groundbreaking.
Yeah, so it was groundbreaking, and people don't realize that Brew brought subscription apps and paid for apps, and all of that hadn't been done up until that point. You had the Palm Pilots out there, but there wasn't a market created for developers to create apps and sell apps until Brew did that, and that was rolled out with Verizon in 1999. Believe it or not, it was called Get It Now. Then 10 years later, Apple does it and creates big app icons and sticks them in store windows, and lo and behold, you've got a billion-dollar industry.
Exactly. Again, the precursor and the
Precursor.
setting the
The
stage for
IP
everything.
is still with Qualcomm.
Is that right?
Yeah, sorry to cut
Has
you.
royalty checks, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's all wrapped up in all of other Qualcomm's other patents, and if you're a licensee of Qualcomm's patents, then you get that as well. It all comes together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I obviously again
good
also
stuff. So
spent many years at
excuse me.
Qualcomm myself in the intellectual property space doing strategy. So I know how well that company makes money off of licensing, and it's ridiculous. So
Lots of patents. Really good model. Really good patent model.
yeah, that's for
So
sure.
in about 2010, I decided to get out of the corporate world and start to help small companies. So I wanted my real call to action was to actually start helping small companies make more money rather than doing it for just big corporations.
Hmm.
And hence Infix came out of that, out of myself doing consultant work. And then I realized that I could do more coaching and really teach business owners to be better business owners, to be better business people. And that's kind of my goal right now.
Yeah, and again, same here, right? Similar journey. So I was at Qualcomm and started consulting with startups on the side, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am. So again, kindred spirit.
We should be partners.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? So
Why
yeah, so
not?
let's talk about leadership. So we had obviously a good discussion leading up to this, and I have a lot of topics here in my notebook that we can cover. So we will fill up as much time and probably then some. So let's kind of focus it. I mean, my world is around and my audience, focusing mainly on technology companies, but obviously you handle every industry imaginable, and I'm sure a lot of the principles are the same, although we may use some jargon that's technical or sort of focused on software development, but obviously building highly effective teams and leading them effectively is universal. Right. So let's get started. I think the first topic that I have here is around autonomy and accountability. So one thing I say a lot is I hate management in general. I hate the idea of having a superior sort of directing a team and telling them what to do. I much prefer a situation where the team, at least to some degree, has ownership over their own successes and failures and are accountable to themselves and one another. So what are some things that that come to your mind around how to instill that kind of environment?
Well, obviously, I think respect comes into that quite a bit. If you have a team, and it's very hard to get away from a hierarchy in the corporate world and in the business world in general, right? There typically has to be a boss. I know we try to build teams that are cohesive and can make decisions on their own, but at the end of the day, there typically is someone who the buck stops with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a real key is the cohesiveness of the team and picking the right team members and then mutual respect within that and respect for the leaders. And one way that I've always found worked well for me in the technology industry and for business owners that I meet with today is to be good at jumping in, to be able to show through experience that you can do the job, that they can do the job. The manager has to have that ability and show that ability often, right? So that the team can then respect and say, okay, this person, he or she can really do the job and really knows it and really has that experience. And that's why they're telling me these things. And then I can respect that. So I think respect has a big part to play. And you have to really build that respect by being a team member. You can't just sit on a lofty perch and bark orders. It might work well for a little while, but you'll probably have some disgruntled people in the ranks if you do that for any extended period of time.
Yeah, I hear it a lot in technology companies around non-technical management, that developers essentially won't respect a non-technical manager, and that's obviously a big challenge. So yeah, definite there. And I think so leading by example. There's a couple of things there. One is obviously leading by example and kind of earning the respect by by having the experience, the relevant experience and understanding. But I think also there's the respect for peers as well, and just knowing and even respect from the manager to the employees, right? That hey, everyone here is an adult and knows what their job's supposed to be and should be given, I think, a certain amount of freedom to do their job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally bound on that mutual respect. To have a cohesive team means that everybody respects each other and respects each other's parts to the job,
Mm-hmm.
and the role that everybody plays. Not everyone plays the same role, right? So you have to have that mutual respect, so that people understand. Okay, a little bit comes down to empathy, right? It's you need to understand what your team members are doing, what their role is, and understand their difficulties. So you have to put yourself in their shoes, so that you can respect what they do, and then they can do the same to you. So having a little bit of empathy
Yeah.
is a good thing in teams.
That makes sense too, right? So if you have the experience in the job, then you will have more empathy for the role that they play. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So one thing that I picked up a little bit, you may have a different opinion of how autonomous teams should be versus how much direction they should have. How do you feel about that?
I think I've seen it work. right? So I've seen autonomy in teams, and I've seen it work, and then I've seen it not work as well. Um,
What do you think are
at
maybe
the end of
some indicators of how much oversight and supervision is needed?
well, so at the end of the day, right, it does come down to management. And I've seen the times when I've seen autonomy not work have been when either the management wasn't accepting enough of it, right? So that the management was still trying to micromanage and step in and not, they a lot of times bad management, you can see it when they say one thing but their actions do another thing, right? That's typical of bad management. Yeah, and so I've seen a lot of that. I've also seen it where the team breaks down inside the group because not everybody is bought into that autonomy, right? And that also I blame the management on, because the management are the people that put those teams together in the first place, right? So, in order to have a really effective, cohesive, autonomous team, you need to have people in that team that have similar work ethics and have a goal, right? A common goal. We have this saying, right? Everyone rowing in the same direction, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times teams fail because not everybody's rowing in the same direction. And that's a focus thing. That's a goals-oriented thing. And not everybody's bought in, and it could be a personality thing too. So,
So I think
it makes it tough.
Yeah. I think almost like kind of bottom line up front, I think if I had to distill my philosophy on leadership, it's, the leader needs to have those things in mind, to get alignment and sort of really put it out on the table that, these are our goals. These are the behaviors and the norms that we want to, the culture that we want to instill in this team. Give everybody the opportunity to speak their mind and be open about it, not just at the beginning, but, throughout. And then sort of guide a little bit, but then sort of step back. And the ultimate goal of a leader is to simply make small adjustments, but ultimately let the team, drive themselves. But obviously you can only do that by being a good leader. If all you do is just step back, then you're not really doing anything. You're just throwing, it's Lord of the Flies or what have you. So.
Right. Yeah. It's about guidance. It is about, about having the right people in the right roles. Every team has several different roles, and you have to have the right personalities in those roles. So that's a big must up front, and the people that are picking that team have to be aware of that and cognizant of that.
So I want to follow that thread a little bit. When there is let's call it a conflict, right? Maybe not necessarily a direct altercation, but if there's a misalignment in values or in goals within the team, first off, how do you kind of identify that, and then how do you manage it?
Well, typically, it's good to identify it before it causes a problem.
Right.
And I think I'm a big proponent of front-end loading. I believe that you should do a lot of upfront work first, so that you can reduce the amount of work that you have to do later, right? In software, a bug found in the system test integration stages costs, anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times more to fix than if you found it at the early, design or early prototyping stages, right? So it definitely proves that you should front end load things, and I apply that thought to team building as well. Let's make sure we have the right people in the right roles, and then if we see indications that teams are breaking down, that kind of comes out in different ways. It comes out in disagreements, right? Because an autonomous team is having to make the best decisions within the group and go with those decisions. So if those decisions are hard and not being made quickly and are stringing out, then we know there's a breakdown in the team structure there, and maybe there's a breakdown in respect. Maybe there's a breakdown in communication. Just seeing that, we can start to say, okay, we have a problem here. Let's pinpoint what that problem is, right? And that doesn't mean that we point fingers at anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you go back and you look at the structure of the team. And I don't know if anybody, you can look this up. It's called Belbin's roles. And it defines, I think there's 8 now. I think it used to be 7, but I think there's 8 now, 8 different roles of team players. And it determines the different personalities and different strengths and weaknesses of every team player, and how you need all of those different roles. And if you have one of those roles that's missing, that can cause disruption to your whole team. So it's a really good way to look at that.
What's it called again? How do you spell it?
Belbin, Belbin, I believe, Belbin.
Yeah, I actually have that mental model myself. Anytime I drop into a team, I have these archetypes that I immediately put people in. So I kind of come up with my own model, but I've never seen that actually laid out. So I'm going to look at that.
No, go check it out. Your listeners can check it out too.
Another framework that I think is relevant here. I think it's called Tuckman's maturity model. So it's the forming, storming, norming, performing phases of a team.
Yeah.
So any manager essentially should be aware of this model and understand the implications. But you can also kind of guide your team through it if you know where you are. There are sort of tools and ways to kind of move yourself into that next phase. Not necessarily quickly, because it does take time, but efficiently or with the least amount of issues. And so the forming being, you get the team together. Storming means, okay, you just start working, and all of those kinks are going to start coming to the surface. The conflicts, the personality differences, the work ethic, all of those sorts of things are going to come up. And as a manager, you simply at that point are just observing and recording and just trying to figure out what these dynamics are. The norming being where, okay, now we put it all out and we kind of say, like, these are the things that I'm seeing, these are the challenges. Let's try establishing some ways of working that will allow us all to be productive. And so this is where you have standards and processes and things like that, implicit and explicit ways of working, which gets you to that performing phase where you guys are firing on all cylinders. And that can shift too, like as the world shifts, as people on the team come and go, you always end up kind of moving back and having to reset and move forward again. But it's a pretty tried and true school of management essentially.
Yeah. There's another thing I like to use, Myers-Briggs. Probably a lot of people have heard of Myers-Briggs, and there's a group of 16 kind of areas, personality types that if you run a Myers-Briggs test, you'll find that most engineering technology types fit into the thinking and judging on Myers-Briggs. So I like to look at that as well, because they're very different people to technology people are very different to everybody else. So we tend to, you can see that and see how that they're thinking. They're very good thinkers, but they're also very judgmental in terms of how they want to do things and their processes. And I want to do it this way. And so it's good to take into account that not everybody in a technology team needs to be a thinking, judging person. You need some of those other aspects of it. Right?
Yeah, and the other thing too, I mean, some people think it's a little bit hokey, so I try not to be too explicit about the types, but the thing that's most valuable for me is how different types integrate and how to deal with other types. If you're a certain type, how do you deal with another type? Introverts versus extroverts, like how do they engage and how do they work well together? And so just in terms of coaching and managing your people, if there is a conflict with someone that is a different type, you try to teach them those particular skills, like as an J or whatever you call, introvert, whatever you call it. Here's how you do
introvert, extrovert, right? Yeah. Yeah, a lot. They've got a bunch of different things there.
Yeah. So
thinking versus feeling.
Made it through one topic, so let's keep it moving because I've got a lot here.
I know, yeah.
I knew this would get long. So one other thing is incentives and motivation. I'm kind of an economist, and so I think about people responding to incentives. So what are some incentives that you think are important, or that you've tried to to drive teams to success?
Well, clearly the obvious thing is money, but it
Realistic.
really doesn't stack up with with engineering types. Actually, engineering types are less concerned with that and more concerned with the value that they're bringing and the type of work that they're doing,
Hmm.
and the impact that their work is having.
Hmm.
Right? So um, a lot of times, involving the teams in how the end goal is going to impact the customer, how it's going to improve lives, if it's going to improve lives, having that kind of end goal uh, is key. Is key to motivating people. And again, also the mutual respect thing. If they feel respected, if they feel that they're doing a worthwhile job, if they know that they're focused and there's an end goal, they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, that will all helps to the motivation.
Hmm.
What doesn't help to the motivation is when, if timescales slip and things start to go wrong, and then management then tries to apply more pressure. That actually is the wrong way to approach it,
Hmm.
and I've seen that go sideways several times.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, so I like what you said about kind of seeing the end goal, but I preach this a lot, to all my clients and everyone who listen, basically, that tying the engineers or connecting the engineers to the customers, to the end users in many different ways, is what I've seen to have the most success. So there's a myth that engineers don't care about business, they don't care about users, they just want to build stuff. And I've fought this battle so many times with development managers and even CTOs. Who just say, don't talk to me about all this customer persona junk. Like, let me just build technology. And what ends up happening there is A, you build an unusable piece of technology, or B, you focus so much on the technology that you end up just wasting a ton of effort over engineering and gold plating things, as opposed to delivering
Mm-hmm.
what customers really want. So as a product leader, product manager, it's I think my biggest role being the champion of the user, or the amplifying the customer voice, but really helping the engineers empathize with and connect with with the people that are using their products is a huge motivator for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen firsthand experience of engineers not happy
Hmm.
because their ideas are not taken
Hmm.
and not just not taken, but just not listened to. Engineers have great ideas. They're the ones at the coalface. They're the ones that are developing the software or developing the hardware that's going to impact the customer. And nothing stings worse than to be told to do a feature that an engineer thinks is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And then to be told that their ideas are not valid, you don't know the business model, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Right? When in matter of fact, the engineers have to really truly do understand the business model, because they're the ones that are coding the business logic.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It's all software.
Yeah.
Um, so when I've seen good teams work, the business development people are working hand in hand with the engineers. That's where good teams work. When the business development person is really integral to the team.
Hmm.
And they're not. It's not a different department. It's more of a matrix structure where you have a team made up of different functions, but they all consider themselves a team, and there's mutual respect, and everybody's listening to everybody, and even if there's an idea that doesn't seem like it makes good business sense, at least we talk it through, and
Hmm.
everybody then understands. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so in Scrum specifically, but in any agile methodology, the product owner being kind of the key business liaison is a part of the team. And
Right.
the one of the failures or downfalls I see in a lot of quote unquote agile teams is they don't really live and breathe that, right? And so the product owner only engages during the ceremonies. So one of the first things I like to do when I go into a new office is make sure that the product owner actually has a desk in the same room as the rest of the team. They don't necessarily have to sit
Yeah.
there all day. They might have another desk, or but the idea is that their home base is in the team, and then they go out into the world to go engage with stakeholders and do whatever other things they need to do, but their home is really in the team, and it's not the other way around, that the team minus them is simply a service organization to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's key.
So kind of tying into what we were just saying. So one of the things that I talk a lot about, not only in terms of incentives but team in general, is putting the team over yourself. I think in a lot of cases people are too individualistic, and the structures and the incentives and everything are kind of based on that. Your performance reviews and your bonuses and so on are tied very much to personal performance and not the performance of the team overall, or even the entire company. So how do you, I mean, for one thing, I guess, how do you feel about that, the balance between, the individual versus the team, and then how do you motivate people to kind of put the team's interest over themselves?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to mutual respect and clearly in any organization, I don't know about the organizations you've been in, but every organization I've been in where there's been those individuals that are just in it for themselves, they stand out like a sore thumb. They're the pardon the expression, they're the brown noses. They're the ones that are spending more time in the boss's office than they are, out at their desk or working with the other engineers. So for me, that's part, again, it comes down to building the right teams, putting the right teams together, and making sure that you kind of weed those people out. This is one of my pet peeves, and actually Jim Collins talks a lot about it in his book Good to Great, where making great teams, it's about a lot of what we do in the US. Our Western culture is to hire for skill set, and really when you break it down, skill set isn't as important as team fit, and work ethic and ability to learn, right? So if you hire on those basis and put skill set lower, and hire more on, do they fit in the team? Are they going to work with the personalities in the team? Are they a team player, right? If you hire those type of people, then skill set becomes a little less important, because you can always teach skill set. Yeah, they may need some basic level of skill set, right? You don't want to hire a person that doesn't have coding experience if the job is coding. But they don't, hire. What I've seen actually in the corporate world is a lot of times there are people that are very focused and very good at what they do and very good at their work, and they're the 1%. They're superstars, but they don't necessarily fit in any team, right? They become more of a diva, and they can be a bigger disruption to the team than what they bring, right? So I think it all comes down to effective team building, and that's about personalities, that's about team fit, that's about team players, it's about people that understand how we're going to work together and put in a structure. And you hit on it earlier, a culture, a team culture that works for your team and works for the people in that team.
There's
round pegs.
So we
round
talked about
pegs
those
in round
archetypes.
holes, right?
Sorry, what?
I'm sorry, I spoke over you. I didn't catch. Say again.
Yeah, no. So I talked about those archetypes earlier, and the superhero is the one that you mentioned that comes to mind. They're so good at what they do, but they're off on this island, and the way you kind of manage those people is you kind of they separate from the team. You have a management sort of liaison. It's a big mess, and so I actually shy away from from those folks, or just put them in an R&D role where they're kind of off doing experimental projects and technology.
Yeah. Exactly. There are roles for them, and they could be the person that's in the corner of the lab that no one speaks to, that one day comes up with the next big product. You never know, right? I'm not devaluing what these people, the value that they bring. They do bring value, but in a team setting,
Yep.
they may not fit. They may, just depends.
And so, talking about the big challenge that I find, especially at large companies, is the way they hire. And we'll talk about hiring talent later, but the way they hire is, there's a recruiter or even just a database, a piece of software that filters resumes based on buzzwords of experience. And they look at your resume quantitatively. Do you check the boxes? Do you have the requisite number of years of experience? And that tells nothing about how that person is actually going to behave in the team. And so I'd say that the number one sort of failure in hiring that I've found in my career and everyone that I know and talk to is they hire somebody based on skills, and then they come into the team and it's a terrible cultural fit, and they end up either having to let that person go and go back, and they probably lost the second or third people on the list because they've taken other opportunities, or worse is that they stick with that person and that person just becomes toxic for indefinitely. Yeah. So
Right, exactly. Yeah.
For fit over skills. You can teach anyone to code, right? But you can't change somebody's mindset, not without an enormous amount of effort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're talking about changing people at the personality level, and that I'm sorry. Once you're past puberty,
Yeah.
you are kind of what your parents make you, right? So once your parents have programmed you in those informative years, you are what you are.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are good enough leaders to make those kinds of changes. Nor should we want to. We all have stuff to get done, right? We want people that are there, that are ready, engaged in the team, and that believe in the mission. And off we go. We have enough things to worry about than divas. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if everybody was better at meditation, then maybe everybody would be better at that, and then the world would probably be a better place as well.
Yeah. I mean, there are ways of fostering empathy for sure, but it's a lot of work, and it's work that
It is a
takes
lot
you
of
away
work.
from building the product. So, I'm going to jump around a little bit. So let's talk about talent. Let's talk about how to find and retain top talent. So this is obviously when it happens, when you need to either grow really quickly or you lose key people on the team. I mean, it can be incredibly disruptive. You can lose months of productivity. Obviously, you can make some really bad bets, on the wrong person, and it can be incredibly difficult. So I believe that, again, hiring and retaining top talent is the most important, crucial role that a leader plays, beside from the day to day. So I guess, what do you think, and what are your principles around how to find and vet and then again, retain really good people?
Yeah, again, it's all about the team. Happy people in happy teams, right? If the team is not happy, then the people in it are not happy. And even if half the team is happy in what they're doing, if the other half of the team isn't, then there's still a level of unhappiness in the team. So, happy employees make really productive employees as well. So, as a manager, I've always made my goal to be making sure that everybody's happy with what they're doing, and that takes a lot. That actually takes a lot of work. That's why management is hard, because you're spending a lot of your time talking to people and asking them questions and making sure that they've got what they need. Mm-hmm. I always tell my employees that I work for them. You don't work for me. I work for you. My job is to make sure you have the tools and the resources to do your job the most effective way you can. And if you're not doing an effective job, that comes back on me. I've got to figure out ways to make you more effective. Yeah. And if that means getting you training because you need the training, then I need to be getting you the training. If that means that there are other people in the group that are impeding you because they're not helping, or there's some kind of negative thing going on, then I need to figure out how to fix that negative thing. I can't put everything on the individual within the team to fix everything, right? There's a responsibility there. That's why the manager is there. That's why the manager is supporting. Yeah. And I see this in businesses as well. A lot of, small businesses, the owner is trying to do the same amount of work as the employees. And well, that's great. And that shows that you can do the job and you're leading by example. But you should be doing that 1 day a week, and then the other 4 days a week, you should be making sure you're improving the business processes and making sure these things are flowing nicely for the employees.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same. It's the same in all businesses. It doesn't matter whether it's technology or sandwich deli bar. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know if I answered your question there.
Well, part of it, yeah. So, I mean, I think in terms of obviously retaining, well, I think attracting too, right? Because people can smell it. They walk in the door and they can tell if there's a funk in the air, right? And so if they see other happy people and everyone's, doing well and having a good time, then that's going to be a place that they're going to want to work. And then obviously, it's great for retention. One caveat to that, I had this conversation with a CEO earlier this week, actually, and he argued that it's more important to be satisfied than to be happy, in that and the distinction is there are a lot of managers or leaders out there that try so hard to make them happy that they don't put enough pressure on them to perform. They release a sense of urgency, and they end up kind of losing productivity. I say what's more important is not necessarily that, hey, everyone's getting, massages and playing ping pong all day and that they're so happy, but that they're satisfied with what they do. So we talked about before, the impact and the meaning and purpose and autonomy and growth and so on, is it creates a sense of happiness, but your primary role as a leader is not simply to make people happy, because that does tug away from the ability to perform. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intrinsics to, and it's kind of it's terminology really. I mean, to me, happiness is that they're showing that they're they feel comfortable in their role, and the work that they're doing is fulfilling for them. I mean, you could use a lot of words, right? I could probably think of a dozen words that would all add up to happiness, in my view. So for me, that's just semantics. Yeah. If a manager's really doing their job well, you will see smiling faces.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And then your first thing that pops into your mind is, hey, they look happy. Yeah, that's because they're fulfilled. They've got life work balance. If they're working for a company, they have an end goal. They've been trained in the requisite skills. Their co-team members have empathy for them, and they have empathy for their co-team members. All of those kind of things equates to a happy team. So I would totally agree with your other CEO for sure.
Yeah, and so to kind of tie up around talent. So obviously, in terms of acquiring or attracting talent, again, having that positive culture and everything is great once you get them in the door. Where do you find, or what are some good sources or ways of even figuring out where the good talent is and how to reach them?
Well, that's $1 million question. I wish I had the answers for you. Actually, I wouldn't give you the answers.
How do I find
if I had all the answers, I'd be selling you that. That'd be a really good business model. I'd be selling that, right? Website. I have your guaranteed best employees here.
Yeah.
Get them here. Yeah. It's a tough one. I think. You can't just do it by resume review. It drives me crazy that big corporations stick all the resumes into, I think the tool's called Resumix, and it basically does mix up all the, and then it pops out and it says, oh, this person has the requisite keywords in there, and this person doesn't, so, get rid of it. It's like, but, when a big corporation gets 20,000 resumes a week.
I've actually heard a lot of people, so in a recruitment kind of seminar, I've heard people say to actually copy and paste the job description into your resume, tweak it a little bit so that it makes sense, but the idea is that you're trying to have as much of a keyword match as possible. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but again, it's the technology. Maybe that's another business idea. Maybe we need to build more artificial intelligence into these resume tools and not just
scrape
poop
their
out.
scrape their social media profile for sentiment and see if they're a jerk.
Yeah, I'm telling you, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe we've got to. I could work on that. That sounds like a cool project.
Like
Lots of cool projects out there, though.
All right, we'll have to talk about that. One thing I will add to it is just the power of the network. So in companies in general, but in big companies especially, I think people don't do enough to network outside of their company. And that's where the talent really comes from. So being able to reach out to a network and say, hey, I need this. Who have you worked with? Who do you know that you can introduce me to? And have someone cherry pick and hand you a resume that's vouched for is worth its weight in gold. So that's obviously a challenging thing and a long tail thing. But what I've found is that the best hires that I've ever made, the best hires that I've brought to my clients have all come from just people I know. I never go to job boards anymore. I never post job listings unless it's sort of a regulation, a requirement, as it is in some big companies. But just basically going out to my network, even Slack groups. There's a lot of domain focused Slack groups out there that always have a talent channel, and that's just a good way to kind of not either pick talent from that source or just say, hey, does anyone know this person? Has anybody worked with this person and can vouch for him one way or another?
Yeah, definitely in this day and age, we should be using all methods possible, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, my experience of back in the old days, and I'm talking probably 20 years ago or more, a lot of times teams got lumbered with that employee that no one wanted because they were someone that worked with the boss 10 years ago, and this guy's great, and then they come in and everyone's like, oh yeah. So, but I think today there's more information out there that you can gather. You don't have to just go by what the boss says.
Yeah, absolutely. So another topic I want to get into, and I think it actually ties really well into your business model, is around player coaches. So we kind of talked about managers that engage in the work, that are still developing or still working, and you talk about it a lot. Working in the business versus on the business. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of your key principles there?
Well, a lot of times when business owners come to me, they're really looking for guidance. They're looking for someone that can help them move their business to the next level, and they're struggling with being able to identify the things that are going to do that for them. Right, that's a big part of it, but also another quite large part of it is just the organization of that and actually having the time to do the things that will effectively move their business to the next level, whatever that next level is. It doesn't have to be from mediocrity to superstardom, right? It can be, a layer in between. I think that a lot of times what they need is focusing, direction, and end goal. A lot of business owners are kind of driving their business around like they're in a car, but they have no direction and no ultimate destination. A lot of times I'll ask business owners, hey, what's your ultimate goal here? And they're like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean ultimate goal? I'm like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to sell the business? Are you going to pass it down to your children? Are you going to do this for 50 years and just die doing it? What's your end goal? What do you want? What do you want out of this? Is it just a paycheck right now? Right, that's great, but you're going to have to plan something. Are you taking $1,000 a month out of the business and sticking in a 401k plan so that you can actually retire at some point? Most small business owners don't have a retirement. In fact, a lot of small business, I've coached over 100 different small businesses, and not one of them had a retirement. Not one.
Wow.
They do now because I force them to. I say, hey, you're making some profits. Let's put it in some tax deferred. Let's create a 401k fund, and oh, look, you can actually give some profit share to your employees as well and make them happier, right? Because now you're giving them an opportunity to save for their retirement. So, it really it's really interesting what I find. But it's sad that small businesses don't have a way to get out of it. It's a means to an end for the time being. And
So if you help them, you help them set those goals. How operationally, like how do you get them out of the day-to-day work and start focusing on the business itself and really what even needs to be done there?
yeah, it starts with a little bit of looking at their financials and looking at how they're running the business. I like to look at the processes within a business before you do anything. A lot of times business owners will look at their business and say, oh, I have a problem. The first thing they jump to is I need more clients. I just need more clients. I need more customers. I need to be selling more product. And yeah, that's great. You do need to be doing that. But first thing you need to look at is
That sounds familiar.
yeah. I mean, but the first thing you need to look at for any business is how do you do what you do? What are your capabilities and what's your capacity? And do you understand that well, right? And understand that well before you move to the point of hiring someone to do a bunch of marketing for you or paying Google AdWords more money to bring in more clients, right? Let's see if we can find some money. My big thing is I always find money in a business just by looking at their finances initially. You can always find money there. You can always streamline things to improve the cash flow problem. Once the cash flow problem has gone away or has gone away a little bit and they have a little bit more cash, then they can start to do the things that they want to do to scale their business, whether that's marketing or hiring an assistant.
Interesting.
So it's kind of
from the growth side, but you're saying find efficiencies, cut costs, and then use that money to invest in hiring experts and focusing on the things that you're not great at.
Absolutely. You always want to look at the internals first before you look externally, right? And it's like with everything. Anybody, you have a problem, if your marriage is failing, you've got to look at yourself first, right? Before you go out and say it's failing because my wife, right? Don't you're my spouse, it's you got to look internally, and it's the same with businesses and small business owners. Their business is an extension of them anyway. I believe in this idea of life work balance when it comes to small business owners. Small business owners need to do is find ways to work the two together, to integrate the two. Their personal life and their business life need to integrate, because a small business is a much tougher thing than being an employee. If you're an employee, and work life, make sure that you're going to the social club and doing all of that and doing your 9-to-5 job, and that's work life balance. But as a business owner, it's 24/7, so you have to find ways to integrate your personal life into your business.
So what are some things, are there any kind of obvious sort of common across industry places where you find a lot of waste, like where you immediately come in, you look at the financials and you're able to what are there any low-hanging fruit that you typically see?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Low-hanging fruit is my bread and butter actually. Initially, a lot of times insurances and number of employees. Even a lot of times people grow very quickly, and they just have way too many employees for the amount of work that they have. So at that point, it's okay, now you need to either go find more work or you have to figure out better efficiencies to do these things with less employees. And most companies, and I'm not talking about laying people off, because typically employers don't have to do that because small businesses have enough churn. Churn happens. So it's just a simple thing. Find a way to do more with less, and then natural attrition, churn, will reduce your expenses. Someone moves away, and then you'll find, well, we don't actually have to replace that job. We can actually, right? And a lot of times, labor, in most businesses, labor is the big thing. Labor is the big cost. Unless it's a high cost of goods business where there's a lot of cost of goods. But most of the time, it's labor.
Yeah, I'm actually
But you
dealing
can
with
look
this.
like,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, we got a little delay. Go for it.
I was just going to say, a lot of times, in our personal lives, we look at our car insurance every year, right? When we get the bill, we look at it and we go, oh yeah, no, I need to shop around, and we shop around and we get a better deal,
Hmm.
right? Typically do that with car insurance, but if you look at business owners, well, they could be paying the same insurance company for 10 years and they never look at it.
Really?
So, I will come in and do a review of insurance and find thousands,
Wow.
literally thousands. And your broker's not gonna tell you every year, oh, you're paying too much.
Hmm.
Your insurance brokers don't do that
Yeah. Oh wow. So you have
unless
kind
you
of a
ask.
maybe an annual review of any kind of subscription, right? Any sort of ongoing expense makes sense, huh?
Every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, every year, business owners need to be doing that, looking at their budget, looking at expenses. Do they even have a budget? Right?
Hmm. That's a good point. If they don't have a budget, that's gonna
If they
not work
don't have a
out.
budget, then they have nothing to measure, right? And measurement's the key. You don't improve unless you measure. If you
Hmm.
don't measure, then you'll never improve.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I'm actually dealing with this with a client right now, and this is something that I find a lot, especially in VC-backed companies. You get an injection of capital, and immediately you start hiring like crazy, but you're hiring to anticipate growth targets. Well, it doesn't always work out that way, and so if you don't meet those growth targets, now you're really heavy, and you start cutting back. And so that there's two challenges. One is, how do you hire good talent that quickly, right? How do you put, attract them and put them through the vetting process and get all the teams to meld, and be effective. And then, if you don't hit those growth targets, then where do you start cutting? And that's it's a really hard decision, that I'm coaching someone through right now. There's a book called the Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which kind of talks about this directly, which is, as a business owner, sometimes you have to do something that really sucks for the greater good. So I'm sure in small businesses, it's true even more, where you're really close to people, you might care about them, their families and so on. But if you don't let them go, it could mean the whole business could go under and everyone loses their job, right? Or there might be some larger consequence, and that's one of the things about being a leader.
Yeah, yeah, it's more profound at the small business level as well, because small business owners tend to kind of befriend their employees a lot more.
Yeah,
So it becomes a much harder decision when you have to lay off a friend,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
A much more emotional thing.
Um, and then, in terms of, so we find we cut some costs, we find some efficiency, we get some money. What are some areas that you typically suggest investing in, to help grow the business?
Yeah, that's a good one. A lot of times, it comes down to um, really five things. Firstly, process efficiencies. Invest in ways to make your processes. So
Hmm.
a lot of business owners they're not aware of software that's out there that can help them do the things that their business needs. They don't have a CMS system, customer management system. They don't have tools that can enable them to offer coupons and stuff like that. So investment in software, initially is a great one. And I see that a lot where
Yeah.
they're just struggling with these old processes that they've had for years, and it's like, you could get software that could totally automate this and free someone's time up, like, hours and hours of someone doing something manually. So that's probably the number one biggest investment that most small businesses can make,
Hmm.
is just investment in productivity software.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm sure if they hire you, they they will find, they'll find a wealth of those. So it's hard to do it yourself, and obviously it takes a lot of research, but that's why you need a coach.
yeah, we can help point them in the right direction and help them kind of analyze what they're doing and decide, well, what kind of software do they need, and then it's an easy process to go out and tender, a few different free trials. There's plenty of free trials of software out there. So
Yeah, I mean, I find it too. I mean, the pace of SaaS implementation, SaaS release, the number of new applications that are getting released in every single niche. I mean, any task you can imagine doing, there is now a piece of SaaS software coming, multiple, dozens even in certain cases. And it's to the point where, I mean, I deal with it a lot where, I use a tool and, the next year it's obsolete. Now there's 15 others that do the same thing. Or, again, there's something that someone will mention to me that, I'm like, wow, I can't believe, like, I never thought, okay, that's a thing now. Cool. Now I can use that. So it is kind of a
Yeah,
hard thing to manage, but I think the key takeaway is for almost any task that, operational task, there is someone's trying to build a piece of software that will automate it. And obviously it is hard to find and evaluate those. And so, you do need an expert.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of there's a lot of software out there, like even for customer relationship management CRMs out there. There's so many of them. Zoho, HubSpot,
Yep.
tons of these things out there that can really help a business be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But finding the right one for you is
Yeah.
there's different costs as well. So sometimes a small business doesn't need to pay for a big system,
Right.
right? Salesforce is not for everybody.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the thing about
So
it too is but don't be afraid to try something, right? Like there's analysis paralysis or paralysis of choice. So,
right,
if you find something and it seems good enough, and give it a shot and try to save some time, and know that you can always probably will eventually switch to something else when something better or cheaper or whatever comes along.
right.
Yeah.
And the key to really figuring stuff out as well, what we really try to do is we try to build a strategy. We try to say, okay, you're driving around, where's your end goal? So let's figure out what your vision is. Your vision for your business, not your vision that you're going to put on your website and tell everyone this is your vision. The true vision for your business.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going, right?
Mm-hmm.
We help them figure that out. We then strategize with them what the strategies are. And once we have some strategies, right, whether those strategies are to market or to fix processes or whatever those strategies are, once those strategies are down, then you can actually create tasks and then manage to those tasks. And that's kind of the second part of what we do is we project manage our clients to those tasks, because 90% of plans never get executed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely you have a 60% more chance to get your plan done if you write your plan down.
Yeah.
You have a 90% chance of getting it done if you have someone helping you, push you, keep you accountable, direct you, guide you. Right? So
Yeah.
a lot of times that's kind of what we're offering. We're offering, let's build a strategy, let's build a plan, and let's help you execute that. Let's help you keep on track. So it's just the project management piece of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the essence of good coaching, right? So whether it's a personal trainer, a team coach, or obviously a business coach, that's the essence of it. So my last company, was in the health and fitness space, and we did a lot of research around motivation and goal accomplishment with respect to health and fitness, and it was exactly that. We had this enormous list of things that increase likelihood of success, and the top two were you have to write it down and you need someone to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
There's a third thing there as well. There's tracking.
Mm-hmm.
So most people that are successful in like losing weight, for instance, people that actually write the stuff down, those programs that make you write down what you consume during the day and keep you writing it down, they're the most successful programs, because again, you don't improve without measurement, and tracking is vital. So you have to have a plan, you have to start executing that plan, and you have to track to that plan and say, okay, did we do what we said we were going to do? What did we do? If you're not writing it down, you don't know what you did. And so that's extremely important for those types of businesses, for the fitness, health, diet, all of those types of businesses. It's extremely important, that tracking piece, right? So once you have that plan, are you tracking to it?
Yep. And that was pretty much the product we built, was the tracking component to it as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah,
Well,
those are the best things.
Well, I think we should wrap it up. We've gone on for quite a while. We've talked a lot about a lot of great things, and I think I made through about half of my topics, so I think we could probably have an episode two at some point in the future. But I think it's a
Yeah, let's do
good time
that.
to call it. But thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate your time, and I hope this was valuable to you, and obviously valuable to folks out there in the audience.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for inviting me again, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
And what's your website where people can find you?
It's infix.us. So that's infix.us.
Awesome.
And you can find everything about Infix on there.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much,
And
Andy.
if you want to email me, yeah, if you want to email me, my email is andy@infix.us. So real easy,
Sounds great.
not
Awesome.
hard.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Andy. Have a
Thanks,
great
Eric.
day. And yeah, happy holidays. And I'll talk to you soon.
Happy holidays. Cheers, mate.
All right. You too.